Hi everyone, Heather here with astrologywithheather.com, and I am back with another special video. And today I have with me Raphael, who is a brilliant tarot reader from Reydiant Reality Tarot. Hi, Raphael.
Hi Heather, thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. And if you guys haven't been following the series we've been doing on tarot and astrology, definitely check that out. I'm going to post a link to the playlist down in the description below. We've been doing a whole series on the major arcana in the tarot and how that relates to astrology, the planets, the signs, all of that. And it's been super, super fun. And we're finally back on track with the Devil card, which is kind of a crazy card astrologically. And yeah, if anybody were to teach this, it's Raphael. He's absolutely a brilliant teacher and he knows so much about tarot. Every time I get a reading from him, it's like freaky accurate. And yeah, he's helped us out actually quite a lot with his reading. So thank you so much, Raphael, for that and for being here and sharing your knowledge with everyone.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for that introduction. That's very, very humbled. Thank you. Um, so today, the Devil card. This is one of those ones, definitely, that when people see it, a lot of people are like, "Oh crap, here we go." And for obvious reasons. When you look at it, right, it's quite an ominous card. It's quite dark. It's quite heavy. It can, in a lot of ways, when you see this card, it really does move something visceral in you. And I think that's because you know deep down that when this card shows up, there is something challenging going on for you, right? Now, we talked about this card when we looked into the Lovers card. I had to mention this because I mean, if you look at it, I don't have it to hand, but I will pull it out in just a moment. The Devil card, you'll hear a lot of buzzwords like addiction, being stuck in situations, cycles, repeating patterns, absolutely. And you'll see a lot of this with this card. Right, so let's break it down then. You've got the two figures that are chained, and they are chained to a block, right? And above that, you've got this big, scary guy here with his devil wings and stuff. And really, this talks about the lower aspects of ourselves. Very often I remind people when this card shows up, it represents where the choices that you've made have somewhere gone wrong, where you've given your power away to something. So I often say to people, if the Lovers card was to represent choice, the Devil card would be like literally where that choice has taken over and it's run away with itself. You're no longer really in control. And the illusion around that is, if you look really close at this and you look at the figures and the chains around their neck, they're actually quite loose, which means at any point they have the ability to shrug that off and say, I will not be ruled by, tamed by, held by, or held captive by this thing, right? So there's two things there. The first one, I'm sure we've all heard the saying, you shouldn't be held captive by, your past decisions. Absolutely, right? And it's the same thing when we think about addiction, and I try to reframe this for a lot of people. Yes, all right, maybe your body craves this, or your mind, or the pattern or the habit has formed. The original choice to pick that thing that you're addicted to up was a choice. It was a decision that you made to pick this up. You also then have a choice to undo that. And so when the Devil card shows up, it does show you where you're being ruled by something outside of yourself, but where you've given your power away to say, I can't, I won't, I don't know how. In a lot of ways, you see this as well when people are in some way playing small. Now, that's some of the heavier meanings of the card, right? To go into it on another level, when you see the Devil card, you can see, again, we talked about in the Temperance card and various other cards, this energy of balance, right? So we've got one masculine figure, we've got one feminine figure. And what this talks about is where something is out of alignment, where it's gone too far, it's gone too overboard. And that whole idea of being held captive by something, you're stopped. You can't move from where you're at. You're stuck in this here and now. Now, on top of that, you've got the the figure there, he's pointing upward with one hand and he's pointing downward with the other. This is kind of like a nod to that whole dark magician. The energy is stagnant. It's being used for the wrong purposes, or the wrong things are being glorified in some way, shape, or form. Now, this card actually corresponds to the sign of Capricorn. And just from what I know of Capricorns, I've got 2 Capricorn sisters. I've dated 3 of them, and I had a granddad, God rest him, who was a Capricorn. And I mean, in some ways, I can see why. In others, they do definitely get a really bad rap. And because when you look at this card, there isn't really anything light or bright about it. It's very severe, it's very heavy, and it's very rooted in, I will look at this, I will hold on to this, I'm not budging from this. And so therefore, anything represented with the Devil card moves very, very slowly.
That is such a Saturn thing.
I
like this card a lot because it's so literal in its connection to Saturn, especially more of the challenging parts of Saturn. Just because I've seen this a million times where somebody gets into something during a specific like Saturn alignment in their chart, like a Saturn transit, right? Anytime that happens, you're locked in. Like if you are making a choice during a difficult Saturn transit, you are stuck with that choice. Or you feel stuck with that choice at least. And usually what ends up happening is that people hold on to something way longer than they have to. It's like, you should have gotten rid of this and ended it like 10 years ago, and you're still doing it. And then finally, like eventually they'll figure that out and they'll get out of it. But it's like a lot of work to get out of it when they do. But it could have been done at any time, right? It's just like I think it's the idea of the work that it's going to take to break out of this, because you're stuck in this pattern, or you feel stuck in this pattern, and then they like don't do it and it takes forever. And that can be true for strong Saturn placements in the birth chart too. Like Saturn on the descendant, which represents like relationships and marriage partnerships. Something I'll see when Saturn especially is at its detriment and like poorly aspected and things like that is that somebody will make a choice to enter into like a bad relationship, and then they'll stick it out for like so long. And then even they're like, I don't know why I was doing this for so long. Like now that we've gotten a divorce, I'm so happy, right? And I've met this other person and things are good, right? So yeah, that Saturn energy, it is that energy, like it's a long energy, like it's going to last a very long time. So you have to be very selective in what it is that you decide you're going to do during these Saturn transits, and also wherever Saturn is in your chart. Like that's another thing too. Like wherever Saturn is in your chart, good, bad, however it's aligned, like that's an area where you have to make more long-term decisions, because you're going to be theoretically stuck with whatever it is that you're creating in that area of life for much longer.
Wow. Yeah, love that. Any tips for dealing with a Saturn transit?
um, Definitely. So Saturn is about doing things like the right way and not the fast way. That's the way that I always like phrase it, because it's not about like short-term gratification. It's about what you need to do in a very responsible way to set yourself up for the future. And if you're making a choice in the moment, because in the moment it feels good, it looks good, it's going to provide a quick fix for something, that's often where you get into that like long Saturn, like drawn out, like, why did I do this? It's so much burden. Oh my God. And I don't know how to get out of it. Or I'm procrastinating getting out of it, because getting out of it is just as much work as being in it. Like that's where you make the weird decisions. And so you always have to think long-term with Saturn. So if you're going through a challenging Saturn transit, it can feel really tempting to do something in the moment to change it, because it feels heavy in the moment. It feels bad, but it's not always going to feel that way. And you have to remember that when you're making decisions just in life in general during those times.
Yeah. And as well, because eventually the transit's going to end, right? Even if it is a longer one, it's going to end at some point. So don't screw yourself up in the meantime.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So a few things I wanted to ask, because when you were talking about that, both of my sisters have stayed in jobs previously. Like, I don't think either one of them has ever stayed, or like, I don't think they've had any more than 4 jobs. in like a lifetime. Like they'll stay at the same place, whether it's good, whether it's bad, sun, moon, rain, shine, like literally they just stick it out. Whereas me, the Aquarian child, has had like a million different jobs and rarely stayed in the same place at once. Is that kind of written into the sign as well?
Yeah, I mean, Capricorn and Saturn, like it depends on kind of what's going on in their chart specifically, but that energy like has a lot of staying power. Like I mentioned before, it's kind of about like long-term gratification, and also it can be an energy where you get stuck with wanting to do the responsible thing instead of maybe the thing that you should be doing, or that's more fun or more fulfilling. Like Capricorns in general, they'll do what's responsible before they do what feels good to them. And so, yeah, it's kind of like I think more of a mindset thing with the Capricorns.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing that you mentioned here that was really awesome as well is this card will show you where you are bound to something. So, as an example, if this card comes up with the Eight of Swords, that can represent prison or imprisonment. And interestingly enough, I remember doing a written reading for someone here in the UK. And when I did the reading at the time, I was like, I cannot imagine this person going to jail. It just doesn't fit, but it's here and I'm going to talk about it. She came back the day that our lockdown hit and was like, oh, by the way, this is what you said. I would be not leaving home, that I was stuck at home, that for some reason I was bound by something. And it turned out to be that. So it's really interesting the way that it can show up sometimes, holding you to things. So the Lover's card, which actually represents choice or making a choice. You see, it's bright, it's beautiful, it's solar in some way, shape, or form, and it's got the two figures there. They're free, they're completely under the energy of the archangel there. It's a blessed union, or the path that you're supposed to take. This is the choice that you make. And the Devil card represents where you are held by or bound by that choice, where you'll go no further for it. And that's very often why this card will accompany the Dark Night of the Soul. You'll see this a lot for that kind of energy. And when it comes up, someone can be in a holding pattern. They can be in a place of not being able to let go. You mentioned that, the Devil card. Oh my gosh, you'll see this a lot for maybe people that go through divorces, where one of them is like, I don't care. We will die and be skeletons before I sign those papers. Or, they're in it and they will not budge. And then from the Ciro Marchetti deck, if you look at this, very similar energy, but you see how the person is caged, but the cage is open. That turning away, right, where he's doing this. So in that despair or that refusal to look at what else could be, there's that, well, I'm just stuck with it. It is what it is. And that's kind of where that energy comes from in a lot of ways as well. Are those I mean, you said they were Capricorn traits anyway.
I mean, it's definitely more of a Saturn energy. I would say that not every Capricorn is like that. So
Very true.
Capricorns, you're awesome. But Capricorn is an energy where like it's a cardinal sign. So they'll like start something, but they're going to stick it out like and be responsible about it. But that cage energy, I like that, that what you just showed with like the person who's turned around and like not looking that the cage is even open, because that's what I see with people with like strong Saturn energy in their charts. It's like, well, this is just my life. I'm just stuck with it. And then I'll tell them, well, what about these options? Look at this stuff in your chart. That's a potential. Yeah, well, I have to do this. Like, okay.
Yeah.
Like they can't see outside of that zone. I haven't seen that actually quite as much with Capricorns. They want to finish what they start. They want to be responsible. They don't want anyone to think that they're like flaky or irresponsible or whatever. And so they'll just do it and keep doing it until it's done. And that's kind of a different thing. And it's, I think, a little bit more benevolent and not as, challenging. But I have a question for you. So
Yeah,
like,
please.
people, when they see the Devil card in the tarot, I feel like that's one of the ones like that and death, which we've already talked about, where people get like terrified, like, oh God. So what do you recommend people do when that comes up? Like, what does that represent, and what can they do with that, like when it comes up in the tarot?
Holding patterns, being stuck, literally being addicted. You'd be surprised how often this comes up for people in what I call, like the situationship, where they're in a partnership with someone and they split up and they get back together, and they split up and they get back together. Sometimes it can literally be that you're in a pattern that keeps repeating, and it's like you just refuse to break out of it. Maybe they refuse to see what it's, what it could be versus what it actually is, right? And that's what the 5-pointed star that's pointing downwards represents. It's being so literal, so material, so bogged down in the hardness of everything that you refuse to see that there is a potential or a possibility for something else. I love that you reminded me of that as well, because with the devil card, some of the really beautiful aspects of it are fine wines, luxurious fabrics. That, if I'm going to have this, it has to be the best. Do you know what I mean? Like, and it can represent those things. It just depends what it falls with. But very often, yeah, it can be those things that we are, maybe that we refuse to see are, they might feel good in the moment, they might even serve a purpose, but they're really, burning the bridge in some way, in the here and now anyway.
Okay.
When I see this for people, the advice that I usually give them: think outside of the box, or I will say to them, you're at a crux point and you're going to have to make a big decision here. Which I know Capricorns don't seem to bulk at. When you say to them, like, you've got a big decision ahead of you, they usually go, oh, okay. Whereas most people are like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I would say that that's accurate. They're not threatened by burden and work and,
Getting stuck in, absolutely.
Yeah.
The other thing with this card as well, it will reveal what is a facade.
Mm.
Right? So, and that's important to remember when we go into the next card. So
Which
this
is going
is
to be the tower, right? That's
right.
yeah. That's
Absolutely.
the other one people are afraid of.
So when you see the devil card, that is the illusion has become real. And it's like, am I in the matrix or am I a part of the matrix? What's going on here? Do you know what I mean? It would be that moment that sets him, where Neo realizes, actually, there's something wrong with this. I don't know what it is. It doesn't feel good. I feel oppressed. I feel heavy. I feel like and at that point, when you're starting to question with the devil card, I think you there's a moment where you kind of know you're in it, and it's like, okay, it's not good for me. I'm not happy. But it's like I can't see what, do you know what I mean? Like, I can't actually see what is or the way that this is holding me captive, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense with that Saturn. Um, is there anything else that you want to add about the devil card?
No, not really. I mean, it's I will say, if you're reading tarot for yourself, if you're reading tarot for others, it is a heavy card, right? But it gets a really bad rap. And when you see this, just like any of the challenging cards, the fact that it's coming up is actually a blessing, because now that you see this, now that you know it, you can do something about it, right? And very often it will show the feelings that somebody has around being stuck or addicted to or tied to or bound to something, in a lot of ways. And I love Capricorn energy, because for me, when I think about the Capricorns in my life, they've all achieved things that I look at and think, yeah, you know what? If I do stick at something, or if I stick at this, there is going to be a reward eventually.
Okay, yeah. And yeah, that's definitely a Capricorn trait, and one that I think a lot of people could stand to cultivate a little bit more. All right, cool. Well, if people want to find you, where can they do that?
So you can find me on my website, which is radiantreality.com. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook. Reach out on any of those, please feel free, or drop a like or a comment. It would be lovely to have you. And the same on YouTube, it's all Radiant Reality.
Awesome. Yeah. And if you guys want to watch the entire series, you're going to have to be subscribed to both of our channels, because the next one on the Tower card, which I know you're not going to want to miss, is going to be over on Raphael's channel. So I'll post the link in the description below. And thank you again, Raphael, for being here. And we'll see everyone next time. Bye, everyone. Oops.